A very warm welcome to the World of Lord Russell podcast show. And today's show is interestingly named A View from the Man in Black, which captures the life of a former FIFA referee and stellar career too, officiating in the Irish League for over 2 decades, where he became known as the top referee in the country. Plus, of course, on FIFA's books from 1980 to 2000, appearing at 2 World Cup finals and countless other international and European club competitions. Yes, folks, it gives me great pleasure to welcome onto the show Alan Snoddy MBE. Welcome to the show, Alan.
Thank you very much, Lord Russell. It's a pleasure to be involved, and thank you for the invitation. And I look forward to the next few minutes or
next 60 minutes or so. It should be a great conversation. We've got quite a lot to cover. You've had such a remarkable life in refereeing in football, haven't you? Let's be honest. Alan, you've had a mesmerising journey as a football referee, and you sampled your first match in the middle in 1972. God, that takes you back some years. When you kicked off your career in the modest ranks of the Churches League, indeed the first of over 1,600 games you would end up taking charge of. So, Alan, what was your inspiration to become a referee? Because it's an unusual career, really. Not many people take up refereeing in sport, do they?
Yeah, unfortunately, not enough people do, which is why we tend to have shortages of referees probably worldwide. But my inspiration, if you like, I think was, first of all, a love of football, obviously. Secondly, I knew I was never going to make top grades as a football player. I can remember attending a game way back before I started, thinking maybe naively to myself, I can do better than this guy that I'm watching in the middle. And I think at some point I saw a course advertised in Belfast for referee beginners, and I took a leap of faith, joined the course, and as we say, the rest is history.
Indeed it is. Yeah, I think we've all sat, haven't we, in the stands in some way, shape or form, be it football, cricket, or whatever it is, rugby. And we've all said, I can do better than that. I can play better in that position. Of course, it's great when you're sitting on the sidelines watching. Not so easy when you're in the game, though, is it? Let's be honest. So what do you remember most about your first football match in charge, Alan, as the Man in Black?
Well, I can remember it was played on a pitch which is very close to where I was living in Finaghy in the south of Belfast. I don't remember being particularly nervous or apprehensive before the game. What I can remember is I think both teams quite surprised that this young guy had turned up to referee the game, and maybe they felt a little bit unsure, mystified, because at that time I think I was the only referee of that age operating, and this was quite unusual. But the match actually was a very one-sided game, so it went smoothly for me. I was happy at the end. I think the players were happy as well. I don't remember any adverse comments, and I certainly wasn't put off by my experiences in my first 90 minutes.
Yeah, because obviously with football and any sport really, I suppose, but football I can certainly relate to, is we've got a young individual, young man in this case yourself, officiating in charge as a referee of a match. You've got those players, haven't you? Those experienced players that will think, you know what, let's have some fun this afternoon because we've been in the game a lot longer than this gentleman has, and we can test his nerve a little. Did that happen at all?
Yes, I think it probably did. It really didn't have any impact on me. I mean, I can remember a few comments over the early years being passed across, but really my memories of those were that they weren't malicious comments. They weren't comments that wanted me to stop. I think people were happy to see a referee turn up, and I think over the weeks and months and years at the junior level that I refereed at for 5 years, I probably got a reasonable reputation, and people were happy to see me arrive. Certainly that was the feeling I was getting at the time from memory. So that was a huge apprenticeship, those 5 years at that level of adult football in Belfast, because these were competitive games. They were the standard of football was quite high. There were obviously adult players, of course.
Yes.
So it was a test for me. It was an experience for me, and I think only for those 5 years in getting that background and experience was a big help.
Well, it's the only way to get it, isn't it? Literally off the coalface. I mean, how big were the crowds in those days, in those matches? Were they quite large? I should imagine quite
No.
tempestuous too.
No, at junior level in those days, you would have had a 20, 30, 40 people, possibly a small group with each club. Obviously, if you were moving into important cup games or semi-finals or finals, then the crowds got a little bit bigger. But these were games in the local parks and small games. Yeah, so of course the difficulty with that was you knew exactly who was giving you the advice from the touchline, so you could.
It's great you called it advice from the touchline. Obviously, the coaches, the managers, and the staff in those days in their dugouts were just as loud and just as brash as they would be in any other match, wouldn't they? Giving you abuse and saying referee has a wrong decision. And in other words, I won't use the words they would use, but that must have been quite a well. You would have been used to it. You'd have known that was going on, wouldn't you? And would go on. Let's be honest.
Yeah, and I always tell people if you can approach and handle the verbals, if you like, from the touchline, from a handful of people, and you know exactly who it is.
Yes.
When you move up the ranks and the crowds get bigger, it just becomes a noise, and obviously you can't identify the individual concerned if there's a few hundred people at the match, and then going up the ranks, obviously a few thousand, and in big stadiums.
Exactly.
It's just a noise. So if you can cope with that tough beginning, let's say, I think that stands you in good stead.
I think so. And it's probably fair to say it's easier to deal with a larger crowd than it is the smaller crowd, isn't it? Because you say you can't identify who the individual is, and therefore it's easier to understand. You probably don't even hear it half the time because you get deafened by the noise and just concentrate on the match. But you stepped up to your career as a referee, and your name is synonymous actually with refereeing in Northern Ireland, officiating in the Irish League, where you became known as the top referee in the country. How did you initially start your career at this level, Alan, and establish yourself as a top referee in Northern Ireland and the Irish League? Because you were the top referee.
At the start, when I was appointed to my first Irish League game, a match between Portadown and Ballymena, it came as a surprise because at that time there were four of us promoted from what we would call the second level to the top level. Quite out of the blue, because normally all these promotions would take place at the end of the season before the start of the following season.
Yes.
So for some reason, the Irish FA decided to promote four referees into senior football halfway through the season. I think there was a feeling then that they needed to freshen the list up. They wanted to give younger people a chance who had proved that they were worthy of this chance, and it just came out of the blue. So it wasn't something that I was sitting waiting for a letter at the start of the season for. So, I can remember the first game. It went, again, I don't have any negative memories of it. It went quite well. Again, I think the players were maybe surprised that at that time I was 23 years old and they were unaccustomed to younger referees turning up for their games. But yeah, there were one or two comments that were made. But again, these were made in a let's say a jocular banter type way. There was never anything malicious, and I got through the game fine, and the observer was really, really happy. So, I thought then I was off to a decent start, and I knew I could handle matches at this level.
Brilliant. That's fantastic, isn't it? I mean, what a huge experience. And to have the assessor there as well, giving you the big marks as a 23-year-old, refereeing players that, were experienced, had been around the block before and knew how to test the referees and the linesman's maturity in those days as well. That's something else. That's brilliant, isn't it? To come off with a great report from the assessor. You must be really, really happy with that. I mean, at the time of your first venture into being a whistler, I use the word whistler because that's a term synonymous with being a referee. Did you ever think back then that you would go on to have such a distinguished career as a top class football referee, and of course Northern Ireland's #1 whistler?
No, never. When I started off in my first game, or when I got the promotion after 5 years, and then the very quick promotion to Irish League football, and then the promotion to the FIFA list. All these things came as surprises when they eventually arrived. So I certainly didn't think that the world was going to open up in the way it did and the opportunities would come. Of course, I had the ambitions and I had the targets that I wanted to become after a spell in the Irish League, promotion to the FIFA list, which came. And yeah, I mean, it was that was ambition, that was a target achieved, and then after that to try and do my best at international level, but never dreaming, of course, that would extend to 2 World Cup final tournaments and other FIFA final tournaments, and the matches that I did for UEFA, obviously, European games. So this was just a step-by-step progress, I guess.
Absolutely. And we'll come on to your international and European UEFA and FIFA matches later on, of course. You were officiating in the Irish League for over 20 years. That's some time, isn't it? And of course, in that time, there must have been some interesting moments and stories, Alan, that you can remember. Probably too many to remember, actually, but some, 1 or 2 little classics that you think, my God, yeah, I remember that. That was some experience.
That's right. Yeah, I had a quarter of a century at top level, which was a nice time actually to stop my career after 25 years at that top level, plus the 7 obviously before that. Yeah, there are a lot of memories. I'm actually trying to get my memories written into a book, and I'm probably 90% there at the moment, but just can't get it over the line. And one of the most difficult chapters in the book is the local memories, because there are just so many. And I know for sure whenever this book is eventually published, I will get people coming to me and saying, "Why did you not write this? Have you forgotten about this situation that we had in a game?" But a lot of really positive memories. I mean, 4 Irish Cup finals would come up at top of the list. Huge occasions. You want to blow the final whistle at the end of those without being noticed, stay under the radar, not have a negative influence on the game. So they're all special memories, and other cup finals that I did.
Yes.
Some games probably remember for the wrong reasons, where I made a mistake, which with VAR now would have rescued me, but back in those days, of course, we didn't have it. So yeah, I mean, but making mistakes or making misjudgments is just part of our life, and comes with the territory. And
it's part of a learning curve too, isn't it? You make mistakes, you learn from them, with hope you don't make the same mistakes again. That's a natural thing in life. And of course, talk about your book. I'm sure it's going to be an interesting autobiography, I have to say. I also did mine going back, and I will send you a copy, by the way. It's called My Way. I wrote mine over a 2-year period during COVID. And it does take 2 years, maybe a bit longer, sometimes 3. I think mine overall was 3 years. And when I take into consideration the consultancy I did beforehand. So I'm looking forward to reading your book. That's fantastic, isn't it? It really is. But you can't get every story in your life into a book. You're going to forget something. It's always the way. But then that's gives you some criteria to write your second book, doesn't it, as well, moving forward? Book number 2. Yeah. You were also on FIFA's books from 1980 to 2000, so some 20 years as a top FIFA official, which is quite incredible. And appearing at 2 World Cup finals in 1986 and 1990 in Mexico and in Italy, and countless other international and European club competitions, which you sort of mentioned a little earlier. So before we talk about the World Cup finals, let's explore the other international and European club matches that you officiated in. I mean, there's quite a few I know. I have read about them, and I couldn't bring them all out on the show. But what are your favourite memories and matches you took charge of? Is anything in particular that was just outstanding? Huge memory. Yeah, again, every match will probably provoke a memory, and every country visited will provoke a memory in every city, every stadium. So it's always nice to sit back and reflect on these. But obviously, there were some games that maybe come to mind a lot faster than others. I think one in particular was probably an international game between France and Israel in Paris. It was a qualification game for the 1994 World Cup final tournament in America. And France had 2 home games left, one against Israel, one against Bulgaria, and they needed 1 point to qualify for the final tournament. And coming into the final minutes, the score was 2-2, and the stadium was celebrating. They thought they had their point to qualify until Israel tore up the script and scored the winning goal with a few minutes left, and the stadium then just went quiet like a balloon bursting. So You weren't held to
thankfully,
blame, were you, Alan?
no, thankfully not. That was that was the point I was just about to make. So I was able to get off and not have any fingers being pointed at me. And of course, France then went on to lose the next game against Bulgaria as well. So they couldn't get this elusive point that they needed, which was a bit of a disaster in French football's history. But when I meet referees from Israel or people from Israel, they still think that this was their best ever result in international football, even till today. So it was a special game, yeah.
Oh, definitely 3-2 away in France on their own territory. You've got to say it's a cracking result by Israel. And of course, those two games, Bulgaria and Israel, you'd have given France 6 points, wouldn't you? Really, 4 at least.
Yeah, 4 at least.
None.
Yeah, 4 at least.
And not qualified. That's some story. It really is. But also in 1986, FIFA named you as one of the FIFA officials to officiate at the 1986 World Cup finals in Mexico. How did you feel at the time? You must have believed in your ability as a top match official, and certainly FIFA did too. I mean, how did you feel being chosen to be one of the greatest, FIFA referees to represent the world of football?
Yeah, obviously it was a fantastic honor. Again, another appointment that just came unexpectedly. It was a phone call to work one day from David Bowen, who was then the General Secretary in the Irish FA. I didn't even know that FIFA had met or were meeting to discuss the appointments for the final tournament. So it wasn't as if I was even at that time expecting to be even in the running. So my games before that had gone well. So I guess they saw somebody that was young, had potential, wanted to give them more experience at top level and build on that moving forward. So having got over the initial shock of the phone call, I guess I just desperately wanted to get home and tell the family before the news leaked out, which I managed to do okay. And then it was focusing on the build-up, on the preparation, and seeking advice from more senior colleagues who were tremendous help.
Yeah, I'm sure they would have been too. I mean, by looking at getting a phone call, who was actually that called you, Alan? Representative of FIFA, obviously, I guess, or somebody from UEFA.
No, it was the General Secretary of the Irish FA called me.
Wow.
So the Irish FA had been notified, and he was just simply calling to tell me this had happened. So
incredible, heart-stopping moment. Well, not literally, of course, but fantastic news.
Yeah.
And of course, your first World Cup finals match in 1986 was actually as a referee's assistant. We would have known him as linesman going back in the day, but now, of course, it's referee's assistant. And what we would have called a day as a linesman, but what an occasion. Italy versus Argentina at the Stadio Cortimog in a 1-1 draw with both Diego Maradona and Alessandro Altobelli scoring. I mean, I do remember seeing a photo at the start of the match with the late and great, of course, Diego Maradona and Gaetano Scirea, the two captains for Italy and Argentina, and, of course, the referee, Jan Kaiser Ned, flipping the coin to choose ends and which team was going to start the match. But Diego Maradona was just in front of you, Alan, and you looked a little stunned. I mean, what were you thinking at the time? I mean, that's some experience, isn't it? Let's be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember what I was thinking at that exact moment. I know when Maradona passed away, this photograph got quite a lot of publicity, certainly in Northern Ireland and probably around the world. And obviously I've got the picture at the toss-up and one or two others. But at that time at the toss-up, I was I can remember being calm and ready. The moment that the reality hit me was when we were standing in the tunnel with the two teams behind us, ready to get the signal to come onto the field of play for the toss-up, etc. And I can well remember to this day just turning around and looking over my shoulder and seeing these world-class football superstars lined up behind me and thinking, what am I doing here? What is going on? This is a normal guy from Belfast in the middle of all of this. And I very quickly then, to be honest, composed myself and got a grip and talked to myself and said, look, you're here. This is your chance. The next decision is the important one, and just focus. It's a game of football. 22 players and forget about the magnitude of the occasion. Otherwise, you could start to just be flattened, and your mind would wander, and 100% concentration was really the key, and that seemed to work. And I was calm.
And that's fantastic, isn't it? To walk out, say, that wonderful arena, World Cup 1986, two fantastic teams, amazing players, world class. And to keep you cool, your first ever match as a FIFA referee, as an assistant referee, linesman, incredible. I mean, it really is something else, a great experience. I mean, is there any particular incidents in that match that you can remember that took place that quite visual to your mind, your memory?
To be honest, there's not really anything that springs to mind in the game. I think probably the game went very, very quickly, and all of a sudden it was over, and you realised you'd been through you'd officiated in the World Cup finals, and nobody could ever take that away from you, and it was just part of my history.
Exactly.
I don't honestly remember any specific incident in the game, and probably if I watched the game again, some things might come back, but nothing that springs to mind, which is probably as a referee or an assistant referee what you want. You just want to be unseen. I
mean, the good thing is as well, you look back at being a referee or an official in that level of football, World Cup finals. I mean, all the cameras are on you. When you're making decisions, you've got millions of people around the world watching the game. And that's something to think about, isn't it? There you are in the stadium refereeing a football match, but actually millions of people around the world are tuned in. And that's something else, isn't it? And all the TV and radio and everywhere else tuning in, something. Great experience. So you don't want to be making a mistake, do you? Because that'd be captured in eternity. So to get through.
No, it's not a nice place to be if something goes wrong. That's sure. And over 52 games, I think, as it was then, and obviously the tournament is getting bigger and bigger.
It is
every 4 years. It's not a nice place to be if something has gone wrong. And
definitely.
But back in those days, yes, we had the television exposure, but nothing compared to what it is now with all the technology and everything else that's been added into the game. But still, crucial games, because nations are depending on their national team winning a game.
They are.
It does the economy good. It does feel good factor, and we know that from certainly England and Northern Ireland experiences when the national team's doing well. It's a nice feeling.
It is, and governments themselves get behind it all, don't they? The push, because drives finances of the country through. People start to spend money with the feel-good factor. It's just an incredible thing, really. And of course, then you took charge of the Portugal-Morocco match in 1986 World Cup finals. There's the group stages in Guadalajara. Now, that's a lovely stage in Guadalajara, isn't it? I've been there myself a couple of years ago. Beautiful, stunning stadium.
Yeah.
And that's some experience, and you were shocked. I mean, were you shocked to be given the match referee role for this game? Or were you expecting it?
Well, we all knew that we would be given one game as a referee as a minimum. There were 36 of us, and there were 36 group stage matches, and FIFA had made it clear at the start that everybody would receive an appointment. So I had expected a game. Obviously, I didn't know which game it would be. I didn't receive an appointment as a referee in match day 1 or 2. I was linesman or assistant referee then, so I knew match day 3 was when I was going to be appointed. This was an important game as well, because both teams then qualified. Morocco then qualified for the knockout stages, the first African team in the history of football to do that, and Portugal losing the game 3-1 was a bit of a shock result. So it was again a fantastic game to be involved in. Morocco scored 2 wonderful goals that couldn't be disputed. The final whistle went, and nobody could point their fingers again at me. So that was a really nice feeling. And again, it was to have refereed a game at the World Cup finals was now on the CV, as well as obviously being appointed, and things were looking good. So it was the only game I was given as a referee in the tournament, but for me that was fine. I was there as a young referee, and there were much more experienced people there than I was, and I just felt at that time, we can go home happy if it all comes to a halt now.
Absolutely. Of course, FIFA must have felt good too, because they also appointed you for the 1990 World Cup finals in Italy, and then of course I'll say Italia 90, which it was, wasn't it? That's part of the programming of the event. You took charge of the West Germany versus Colombia encounter in the San Siro in Milan, which ended 1-1. An interesting match to oversee as the man in black. A top group game in many aspects, as West Germany did go on to win Italia 90 and become world champions again for the second time in their history. Tell us more about this match. I mean, to officiate the San Siro too, that's something, isn't it? What an experience.
Yeah, again, I saw this as another step forward, to be trusted with a game of this magnitude in the final tournament. As you said, you had Germany, you had West Germany as it was then, Colombia, fighting to qualify for the next stages. So this was really potentially a group decider, depending on the results and obviously in the other game. So the game ended 1-1. Both teams qualified. I guess this game will be remembered for the Valderrama incident just before half time, which I'm sure you're going to ask me about. So
you must carry on, Alan, and talk about it, because Valderrama, what a star he was, his hair, his whole charisma. Come on, let's hear about this incident. Because yes, it was a true incident, wasn't it?
Well, it was, it was. And in terms of what my memories were of it at the time, there was a challenge in midfield. He was involved in it. He fell over, exaggerated any contact that was made on him. There might even have been a small tug on his shirt, but he wanted a free kick for nothing, in my opinion, and I just played on. And normally when you play on, the player will get up eventually, and life will go on, and the game will just continue. But he decided that he was going to stay lying on the ground, and he lay, and I played on because I just knew in my mind that if I stop the game now, he wins the little battle and I lose it, and I'm not prepared to lose it. So that's why play continued for so long. And when we had a natural stoppage, then the stretcher came on. He was stretchered off. You can imagine the San Siro, 72,000 people in it, and probably 70,000 of those were German supporters, because Milan was obviously a convenient venue, and they had a huge support. So they gave Valderrama some advice as well. And then he reappeared from the tunnel and came back onto the field of play, and I think a minute or two later the halftime whistle had gone. So I was confident that I'd done my job. I had not bowed down to him trying to pretend he was injured, perhaps the first high-profile case of feigning injury or simulation or trying to deceive the referee. But of course, that issue is still with us in football, and it's not nice to see.
It certainly isn't. And of course, you showed, who was boss, and that's great too, because that would emanate through the rest of the game, wouldn't it? Really, other players would then think, "Hold on a minute, Alan Snoddy's not going to give us anything. He's here as a referee, solid, and it would stop any further simulation, hopefully." And but yeah, that incident, and I'm not sure how. I can't really remember how Valderrama continued after that, but probably was a different player in the second half, I'd imagine.
Yeah, there's nothing comes to mind in the second half. I can remember the second half was much calmer than certainly the last minutes of the first half. And yeah, you're probably right. The players understood where the boundaries were, and I had made my point of view.
Quite right.
Thinking back on it, if I'd have just given a silly free kick or a free kick because he fell down, this would never have happened. But I know in my own mind it would have bin an incorrect decision.
Correct.
Yeah.
So you're probably the early days, 1990 early days of the Kalina, but with hair. So an inspiration. Maybe Kalina was watching that game and thought, I'm gonna follow Alan Snoddy now in my refereeing career.
I'm not too sure. I'm not too sure.
I'm making light-hearted moments there, Alan. But yeah, Kalina was brilliant, wasn't he? He was a world-class referee, truly.
Oh yeah, he set the standards and raised the bar. Raised the bar in many things, including fitness levels and appearance and athletic appearance and his preparation, and yeah, absolutely.
Did you ever meet Kleiner?
Oh yes, yes,
Yes.
yeah, many times. Yeah.
What was he like as an individual? Because obviously on the pitch he was very wide-eyed and scary individual that players had ultimate respect for. Was he similar, or was he
No,
somewhat different?
He's a relaxed guy, and we've
Yeah.
had a few conversations over the years when we've met at FIFA seminars or UEFA events, and no, he's
Wonderful.
down to earth guy and a referee person, and always ready to help and express an opinion.
And that's what it's all about, isn't it? And I do admit, he does come across as a gentleman, actually, off the pitch, I have to say. And he's the inspiration behind VAR as well, isn't he? The modern day virtual assistant referee. There's sort of inspiration behind that. So that's good.
Yeah.
Incredible character.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as a FIFA referee, you also officiated as an assistant referee, and I use that term again, in 4 other games too. So some real involvement in both the 86 and the 1990 World Cup finals. What were the other matches you were involved with as an assistant referee in Italia 90, Alan?
Yeah, well, Italia 90, as an assistant referee, certainly in 86 in Mexico, I can remember the quarterfinal game between Germany and Mexico. I was an assistant referee then, so this was an extremely important match late on in the tournament, and of course the Germans went through on penalty kicks, as is their habit.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. The other games, Yugoslavia, Spain, assistant referee in that one. United Arab Emirates, I think, were involved against Belgium. So yeah, there were many games, but the benefit of being involved as an assistant referee or a linesman, it was another 8 games experience at the highest level, and watching your colleagues who were much more experienced than me in many cases, how they prepared and how we did things back then, all added to my experience, which I hope I used to a positive effect in the later years. But of course now it's completely different. Teams of referees are appointed from the same country. It's not a mixture of 3 of us, 4 of us from different nations. So that's all changed for the better, of course.
Of course it has. Of course, you mentioned Yugoslavia, as an assistant referee in a Yugoslavian match, because that would have been Yugoslavia's last ever appearance as a country in an international competition. Because 1992, I believe they qualified for the Euros, but because of the breakup of Yugoslavia, they were replaced by Denmark, who then went on to win the 1992 European Championships, I seem to remember. But in 1990, that would have been the very last Yugoslavian international appearance, wouldn't it? At
was,
FIFA
yeah.
And European competitions.
It was before, as you say, the breakup of Yugoslavia into several Balkan countries now, where football is a passion.
It is.
A lot of high quality players coming from all of those certainly from that region. Yeah.
Yeah, and because I personally know what it's like to be at an international match for the last representative side of a nation. I was in Belgium going back, and when Belgium played East Germany, and it was the last ever East Germany representative side to play. And after that was the end. No more East Germany football. And I was at the match, and East Germany beat Belgium 2-0. It was quite incredible. But anyway, that's not about. It's about you, this podcast. And so yeah, to actually referee one of the last ever Yugoslavian team, or be an assistant referee to one of the Yugoslavian last teams ever to represent that nation at a FIFA or European UEFA competition is quite incredible, isn't it? Really, something to put in the top pocket.
Yeah, you just reminded me of another story. Actually, I refereed FC Chemnitz and Karl Marxstadt in East Germany 2 weeks before the Berlin Wall came down. So we could feel, talking to people then, that there was change in the air as well, and that was also the start of unification in East German clubs. Yeah,
incredible. That's incredible. Great time at the time, wasn't it? Well, bad time, but great time at the time also with the wall going down. It changed an awful lot, not just in Europe and politics, but football. Sport was changed immensely over that period.
Yeah,
and as we know, with Yugoslavia breaking up as well, it all started to change the whole territory of European football. And of course, the big talking point in 1986 World Cup finals in Mexico is the hand of God goal by Diego Maradona for Argentina in the quarterfinal against England in the Estadio Azteca. What a lovely stadium that is. I've been there a couple of times. It's beautiful. The atmosphere in a match must be amazing. As a FIFA referee, Alan, what is your point of view here? The referee, Ali bin Nasser of Tunisia, did resort to the guidelines, I should say, issued by FIFA at the time, and looked up to the linesman for the final signal. Bulgarian Bogdan Doshev, I think that's his name, the linesman, had a better view of the goal and saw nothing wrong, which prompted Nasser to allow it to stand and let Argentina have their 1-0 lead. One of the most contentious moments ever in World Cup history, and probably never going to be rematched, is it? And that's just amazing. With VAR, we'd have been through the gate, but what an event that was.
Yeah. Certainly with VAR now, the goal would be obviously ruled out. It was interesting because a few of us were in the stadium that day just to watch the game, because we were based in Mexico City, so we went to watch games in the city when we weren't appointed. Watching it live, there was nothing really standing out to suggest that it clearly handled the ball. Yes, of course, there was a reaction from some England defenders, and it wasn't until afterwards, when we started to hear things and see television replays, that we realised that a clear mistake had obviously been made. Of course, these days with internet, mobile phones, social media, instant replays, everybody in the stadium on their phones, the whole situation would have been didn't really pick it up. It was that fast, and just let's say a clever piece of play. And then of course he scored his wonderful individual goal after that as well, which was another highlight on the positive side.
He did indeed. Went round 5 England players, one of them being Terry Butcher, who I did mention this to Terry, actually, when I interviewed him on stage a few years ago. You know, the Diego Maradona goal, the fifth of the 5 England players turn around and slot it in past Peter Shilton. I did say to Terry Butcher, I said, I've got this picture in my mind, Terry. You're sat on the ground at the Azteca with your head in your hands. This diminutive little figure running past you, arms up. He just scored the best ever goal ever in World Cup history. What did you think? Well, I'll tell you, Alan, I won't say what he said because the whole of that England side were really against Diego Maradona. But of course, you can't speak illy of the dead, can you? Let's be honest. So, but that was some sensational goal. And I know outside the Azteca, I've seen the sign up when I've been there. The best ever goal in World Cup history was scored here. And they talk about the Diego Maradona goal against England when he went past 5 players. Sensational.
Yeah. No, it'll be a goal that'll who knows if it'll ever be repeated or exceeded, but yeah, just a wonderful piece of skill from a very talented player, and just a pity that I suppose his reputation was tarnished by this handball situation. And I mean, a good example of the technology and VAR today would have obviously ruled that out, so the right decision would have been made. But
I agree.
Back then it was different.
And of course, it reminds me going back to the 1966 World Cup final, England against West Germany, when the Russian linesman gave that goal for England, which I don't think really did cross the line. So there's some sort of similarities there, isn't there? So you could say that even that was a controversial moment in football.
Yeah,
controversial moment.
Controversial, yeah.
And so there's 2 there, isn't there, really, all involving linesmen over the years, and both involving England. So must be a hat trick coming somewhere, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, let's hope not. But again, the technology will make sure the right decision is arrived at, and football will accept that.
I'm sure they will.
Yeah.
Because I also understand FIFA's direction in the 1986 World Cup final was to let the referee of every match keep the match ball, which Ali bin Nasser did, of course, in the match between Argentina and England in that infamous World Cup quarter-final. And I believe he recently sold the match ball for $3.3 million, a huge amount of money. What a payout, as a referee for that match. I mean, did you get to keep your ball, Alan, from the Portugal-Morocco match you officiated? Probably not worth $3.3 million, though.
Unfortunately not. I didn't. I'm not sure where it went, to be honest, but if I thought it was worth that sort of money, I would probably have stuck it in my bag for my pension fund. But no, I don't have the ball. No, that's the answer. So I'm not quite sure why that is, if we were allowed to keep them. But okay.
Yeah.
The memories are obviously the special part.
Yeah, because a few people have said to me, well, it's about the memories, isn't it? And a few people have said to me, why did Ali bin Nasser keep the ball? Well, I said, well, it's because it was the FIFA direction. Because, when they talk about this money now that's come out of it, $3.3 million.
Yeah,
I mean, one hell of a football to have, isn't it? And it'd be worth a lot more in years to come, I'm sure, for that incident.
Yeah. He must have made a beeline for it at the final whistle, or blown the final whistle at a suitable point when the ball was quite close. But okay.
Probably. He probably had in the back of his mind, I'm keeping this ball whilst he's refereeing for sure. I mean, do any games stick out in your memory, Alan, when looking back over the years? I know we talked about your earlier years, matches, but are there any other games that you sort of fondly remember for various incidents?
I think when I look back on the steps that I took on my career from obviously a very young age, I could probably pick out 2 or 3 games that maybe made a difference, because these were important games, and there was somebody there to watch them, and they saw something in me that they were happy with. One particular game in Belfast, one Belfast team playing a team called Dundela playing Newry City in the first round of a cup match, which potentially could have been the final of the tournament 6-7 months later. I remember one observer coming there and being very, very happy. So, sometimes one match can just save you some time in the promotion. Receiving a couple of appointments at very short notice when a referee had to cry off a game on a Saturday morning, and being thrown into a game that I probably wouldn't have been appointed to in the first place. But again, coming through that well. So being in the right place at the right time, I think, obviously was helpful. Some people say you make your own luck, okay, but you still have to take that opportunity when it arrives.
You certainly do. And you're right in saying being in the right place at the right time is what usually is all about, isn't it? Let's be honest. And then to seize the opportunity to say, so that's a brilliant thing. And what players and managers in particular stick out in your memory? Because, there are some colourful managers out there and coaches, and, particular individuals on the field of play can be quite colourful too. You've obviously met most, if not all of them.
Yeah.
So anyone that sticks out in your memory as being particularly of interest in your days as a referee?
There's one. I mean, all the local guys, the local managers, the local players. One thing that I take a lot of pride and pleasure from is that no matter when I meet these guys, either at a football game or in the supermarket or the shopping centres or the garden centres or in the street, we'll always stop and have a yarn and discuss the old days. So, which is really, really nice, and it also brings back some memories. And there really are no exceptions to that. There's one guy that sticks out for really. It's the late Gerard Houllier, who I met several times, and coincidentally was the coach of the French team that lost to Israel. Then he came to Belfast when he was coaching Liverpool, and we had a good chat. And then we met in games that he was there for UEFA as an analyst, or just simply watching the game. And this guy was a real gentleman, and there's one thing sticks in my mind. Whenever we met, maybe the 3rd or 4th time, he actually said, "Hello, Alan." He knew my name. He knew my Christian name.
Yes.
I just thought that was just absolutely remarkable for somebody who's meeting people day and daily in football, and yet he remembered and he knew what we'd spoken about before. I mean, he asked me never to remind him about France-Israel again, please. so in a very nice way. When he took on his coach at Liverpool, they came and played in a tournament in Belfast, and a real gentleman.
Definitely.
A real example of how to behave yourself in a correct way, and just conduct yourself properly, and a true professional, and a big loss to the game.
Huge loss to the game. Absolute huge loss. And he was iconic in so many ways, wasn't he, Gerard Houllier? Absolutely fantastic individual. Yeah. Absolute gentleman. May Gerard rest in peace. Fantastic. Huge shock to the football world when he sadly passed away.
Yeah.
So when did you hang up your whistle, Alan, and retire as a referee? What made you decide to hang up? I mean, we all get to a stage in our careers where we think, well, we've hit the pinnacle. I can't go much further, or I'm getting too old for this now. What was your real reason for retirement?
Well, I stopped on the international list at 45 because there was an age limit, and I knew I still had a few more years left in the legs to referee domestic football in Northern Ireland, and I was really enjoying it and really happy to do that. But at the same time, I knew that at some point we had to draw a line under my career on the field and start a new chapter off the field, which came after some thought, and I knew it was the right thing to do at the right time, because I've seen too many referees continue too long, and then mistakes creep in and fitness levels drop, and
yes,
you're remembered for something that's happened in your last season. So at 48 years old, I decided enough was enough. There were a couple of other little reasons. I'd never in my 32 years had to turn down a game or come off a field injured or picked up an injury. So my only injury ever was a very mild calf strain, which I managed to shake off in a few days. And I didn't really want that little record, if you like, to be broken by having an injury in a match and putting myself out for weeks or months, and just undoing all the good work that had happened before that. I also knew the following year there would be an opportunity to join the observers list at UEFA and FIFA level, and I saw that the year before that I could get that experience at domestic level in Northern Ireland, and that was really the plan. And again, right place at the right time.
Absolutely,
it suited me. Yeah,
that is a good plan, Alan. I have to say, because so many footballers or sportsmen in general, they should retire. They don't. Probably because they love the game. They don't want to be out of it. They've loved it. It's been part of their life all their life. And of course, then things go wrong, and they're always remembered for the things that go wrong, not for the things they've done beforehand. So you probably have done the right thing, to be fair. And that's a great thing to have done, isn't it? But of course, you must have missed refereeing, because you would have done all those years, in the middle, when you retired, and you probably still miss it now. But you did move on, and move on you did. And I understand that you have been working in Cyprus as head of referees, a 2-year contract. That must have been an enjoyable 2 years, Alan, I have to say, out in Cyprus. You must have met some interesting people in that role too, and that's an incredible setup, isn't it? Going in as an active referee to working in Cyprus as head of referees, that's a great contract.
Yeah, it was really enjoyable. I had, I think when I was, it probably rewinds several years before that, when I had the opportunity to become the first referee development officer with the Irish Football Association. This was a new full-time professional job that was introduced some 17, 18 years ago now. And I had a decision to make. Should I leave a safe, secure job in the bank, where I probably had another 8 years to work before I could retire on a full pension, right, and go into football full time as really managing refereeing in my own country? And again, I took a leap of faith. Again, it was the right decision to make, little knowing that the journey would then, after I took early retirement at the Irish FA, take me a few months later to Cyprus, based on the work that I'd done at home.
Yes,
because they needed an independent person to manage the refereeing and lead the refereeing there. So I was approached, talked about the job, and agreed to take it. So it was a bit of a leap into the unknown, but I knew I had the experience and the knowledge and the credibility to take this on, and it was a nice job.
Absolutely, and the sun will be shining quite regularly there too. So
yeah,
better, good weather, and a great job for 2.5 years. And of course, shortly after your role in Cyprus as head of referees, you had a spell of around 60 months or so as a referee consultant to the Latvian Football Federation. Another interesting role that, Alan, as well, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Latvia came calling when I had stopped in Cyprus. I'm not sure how long I had stopped, but I mean, again, I was available to take on this type of role. So yeah, they had some had some issues within their refereeing setup, and they needed again independent person to make the decisions and not be influenced by potentially by clubs or just a neutral person. Unfortunately, then COVID arrived and football ground to a halt. So that little spell came to an abrupt halt because there was no point in staying around when there was no football being played and no refereeing being done. So it was a pity. But
a pity.
Yeah.
COVID, I'm afraid, has been the ruin of many, many things over the years, isn't it? We've all suffered. I think most people in the world have suffered because of COVID. But FIFA also appointed you to their instructors list too. I mean, so what did this involve, Alan, for you? You know, being part of the FIFA instructors list.
Well, again, a tremendous honour. Certainly, personally, very proud that I'm on this list. I think, I hope Northern Ireland, the Irish FA, are proud that they've got somebody instructing at that level, being trusted with mainly conducting seminars in the member associations, some in Europe, but of course when you get involved at FIFA level, it's worldwide, whereas UEFA sticks with obviously European countries. So, you know, this has given me the opportunity to go and work with the top referees in many countries outside Europe, including China, Grenada, Palestine, Bangladesh.
Wow.
You know, so it's it's just been marvelous experiences. And you know, refereeing is the same. Football is the same all over the world. So a coach in Bangladesh or a coach in China will be doing exactly the same coaching in any country around the world, and refereeing is exactly the same. We will discuss a situation in a game, and the discussion will be the same no matter where the lecture room is or where the seminar room is.
Same rules, same FIFA rules apply regardless of where you are in the world, don't they? So
exactly.
Absolutely. But of course, it's a joy just to work with those other individuals, and particularly to help countries, progress forward, in their football experiences, because some countries aren't quite as high up the list in their football credentials as the Western world is, Southern America's, and to actually help those countries perform and get through. I think it's great, isn't it? That's a real testament to yourself.
Yeah. Of course, you can. I've had the opportunity to follow up in some countries by being invited back again or appointed to go back again, which is quite important, because then you can measure if there has been progress from year to year. That part is quite satisfying, especially for the smaller developing countries where you can measure significant progress year by year.
Absolutely, I quite agree with that completely. You've also done a lot of work, I think you might have mentioned it earlier, with UEFA's Centre of Excellence. So really, there's been no shortage of work, Alan, since you've retired. You're still kind of involved with the refereeing in football, which is amazing. It keeps you busy, and obviously it's a huge interest of you. And you are still involved with refereeing, and in some way, shape, or form, which is obviously an joy, which obviously you enjoy.
Yeah,
it's fantastic.
Yeah.
So how did that involve?
Well, people use the word retire. I'm not sure. People keep asking me when I'm going to stop, and the answer is when people stop asking me to do things and be involved in things, then that's fine. But the UEFA Centre of Referee Excellence again is a huge project, and a real joy and pleasure to be involved in that. So, it started off in 2010. Every country in Europe, every 2 years, sends a referee team for a introductory course and a consolidation course. So that's taking about 20 days in total. We follow the trios closely for 6 months, develop them, educate them, and measure their progress over the 6 months. And to become a core referee or assistant referee for the match officials is also a great achievement for them, because they've been selected in their own countries because they're showing promise and potential, and then we do our best to help them on their journey. And many of those referees become international referees within a very short time.
And that's fantastic. So your experience is really doing well here, delivering your vast experience to the up and coming referees of our time. which of course is what you didn't have. You were at the grassroots, learning right from the base up. But now referees have that wonderful culture now of learning from the likes of Alan Snoddy. I mean, it's great, isn't it? Great for the future of sport, great for the future refereeing. And bringing referees through. Fantastic. And great for you as well.
Oh, no, it's great for me because I thoroughly enjoy it. And, when I think back to my own time, as you say, we didn't have any of this support and expertise and all the technology that's available now, and the fitness, the sports science, et cetera, which I would really have embraced in my time as a young referee. So, but life, everything improves.
It does. And improve it does indeed. I mean, your vast experience in refereeing, observing, assessing, instructing, mentoring and coaching at all levels of match officials. It's clear why you are very much in demand for seminars and development projects these days. I mean, do you see these type of events and projects as your future moving forwards?
Yes, I think if I reflect on what I've been through, the bit I really enjoy is coaching, mentoring young talented referees. So that's when the UEFA Core program would have really been right up my street. Still being involved in that with a new international referee and coaching him in 2023. You can see the progress. Looking back, I probably would highlight coaching Milorad Mazic as part of the talent and mentor program at UEFA, starting back in 2011, when we worked with referees for 2 years. And, within 8 years, 7-8 years, this guy had refereed the final of the Champions League. So, of course, I'm not for 1 minute suggesting that it was me that that pointed him in that direction. He may well have refereed it if I hadn't been on the scene. But, I got really a lot of satisfaction and pleasure from seeing him progress year by year by year. And, he put in the work. We could only point him in the right direction. And he worked so hard and fully deserved all he got. But it's nice to have been involved with somebody that's got to that stage. So, I mean, if you ask me what I enjoy most, it's seeing young referees develop and progress. And, it doesn't happen with everybody because everybody reaches their own level.
Yes.
And not everybody will referee a Champions League final or be appointed to World Cup final tournaments. But what I would always encourage people to do is maximize your own ability, and see what level that takes you to.
And if people can do that by maximising their levels of abilities, then that's great. You've taken them to their limits. They may be able to push forward a bit further. And of course, you will find those amazing referees that go through the whole way and become top FIFA refs as well. That will happen. But of course, what you're doing is making sure that there's a bigger bowl of talent underneath that can feed through. Right, whereas before that bowl was a lot smaller, I would imagine, but there's now more people to choose from. Which is great, isn't it?
It is
great for the future of the football.
Yeah, it is great, and to reach the top now, you need to work harder than the person beside you or the person in another country. And again, of course, you need all the luck that we've talked about earlier. But as I say, you make your own luck quite a lot.
You do. It's all about making your own luck, or creating your own luck as well. It's just an amazing thing, really. But of course, Alan, we can't just talk about Alan Snoddy without talking about Alan Snoddy MBE, because you were appointed member of the Order of the British Empire, MBE, in the 2020 birthday honours, which would have been our late and great Queen Elizabeth II birthday honours, for services to association football. I mean, that's some accolade, Alan, isn't it? And a very proud moment. Who presented you with your MBE, by the way? That's just some story.
Yeah, it still seems a bit surreal even today, and when people remind you, you suddenly realise it's real. Prince William did the ceremony.
Wonderful, future king.
Yeah, future king. Yeah, exactly, and a football person. So he understood football, and
he loves his football, doesn't he?
Loves his football, yeah. So, but yes, I mean, this was a day that it's very, very difficult to find the right words to describe it. What I try and describe it at, it was the most informal, formal occasion that I've never been at.
Right.
If that makes sense. Because it was relaxed. It was a conversation between the two of us for about 3 minutes, mostly about football. And, you know, he asked me about VAR, so I had to very quickly
explain,
very quickly find an answer. And, you know, just an occasion that is so hard to describe. From my side, pride, humility, all the things, you know, for somebody to have sat down and put forward the application, for somebody to have thought that I deserved this, for people to have supported it with their, as I understand it, recommendation or support, is a special part. That's the special part, because I don't think anybody that's been honoured on any of these lists are really working with this aim in the back of their minds. I'm doing this because I want an MBE or an OBE, etc. I think it just happens. And again, I know I've repeated this many times on this show, but a total surprise coming completely out of the blue and just unexpected.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And of course, whoever put your name forward and the others as well, you'd never know who they are, would you? Because it's anonymous, isn't it?
Yeah, you don't know, you see, and that's part of the mistake of the whole thing. And I think that makes it even more special because, as I said a minute ago, for somebody actually to have thought to themselves, well, I'm going to nominate Alan Snoddy for an honour is and then not only to think about it, but to actually do it is special.
Yeah, quite agree indeed, and a great honour for not just for yourself, but your family as well.
Exactly.
Same for them to say, oh, you know, my father or my uncle, you know, grandfather, you know, he was an MBE, he was knighted by the royalty, by royal assent, you know, and that's an incredible achievement. It really is.
Yeah,
no,
it certainly meant a lot to everybody. That's for sure. Yeah,
and of course that's a great way probably to end this this podcast. It's been a fantastic conversation because we are over an hour in, which is great. The time just seems to flow on this show, Alan. I've got to say, it just disappears like you can't believe. It really, really does. And a great topic of conversation too. And as always, you know, I know we could talk forever, Alan, as there's so much more to talk about too. So thank you, Alan, for coming onto the show and talking about your professional life in football as a top-class FIFA referee. It's been a huge pleasure. And as always, the pleasure is all mine. And of course, the show's audience, when his podcast is released on the World of Lord Russell podcast show, probably either this evening or tomorrow morning. So thank you very much for coming on. It's been a pleasure speaking to you, and a great life in football, a great life as a FIFA top-class referee in football. You've done the sport and yourself and your country and your family a great honour. Thank you very much for coming on to this.
Thank you so much, Lord Russell, and it's been a real pleasure to have had this hour with you. And as you say, the time has flown, and I've really enjoyed it. And the memories are flooding back as we speak.
Well, stay on, because I'll wrap up now and have a quick chat afterwards. If you don't mind, that'd be fantastic. So the next episode on the World of Lord Russell podcast show is The Darting Monster is Jaws, where my special guest will be Colin Lloyd, the former PDC darts player, former world #1, and the 2004 World Grand Prix, the 2005 World Match Play champion as well, where we talk about Colin's life in darts at the highest level. And of course, I'm looking forward to seeing you all on the inside. So until then, it's au revoir from him and au revoir from me.